Now, I will tell you about the secrets of history that you will not find in any textbook. Sometimes the most important inventions are born not in laboratories, but in wet dugouts and frozen truck beds. Soldiers in World War II found warmth where it seemed there was nothing left but wind and dampness. An ordinary tin can, a crumb of candle wax, a handful of clay, or the remains of oil became small hearths around which life was sustained. There is no romance in these stories, only patience, the cautious joy of a mug of hot tea, and a stubborn determination to survive another day. Watch the video to the end to find out how 7 types of homemade heaters were made from improvised materials on different fronts, and what this said about the people who created them. Are you ready for the shocking truth about how a simple tin can save the strength of entire platoons? In the north wind and drizzling rain, British soldiers knew how to turn leftover rations into a source of heat around which they could gather their hands. A simple jam jar, a piece of thick cardboard, and a few drops of fat became a quiet, stubborn flame without fuss or smoke. They used this tiny fire to warm a mug of tea and dry gloves, and laid out wet socks nearby to drive away the dampness, at least for the evening. I discovered this by chance in the regimental diaries. The short lines about warmth sounded louder than any fiery speech. The strength of this decision lay in discipline, not in effectiveness, and in the ability to be content with little. No one expected a large stove, no one counted on a miracle, but everyone looked for a corner where the wind could not reach them. In the rainy regions of Western Europe, such a candle in a tin can became a symbol of solitude when there was too much noise and orders around. They sat close together, carefully changing places and making sure that the flame did not scare away the night. In this silence, it became clear why an ordinary tin can was not rubbish, but a part of a soldier's life. This thing helped both the commander and the recruit without distinguishing between ranks. When cold hands reached for the lid of the mug, conversations became softer and shorter. Some remembered home, others remembered the road to the shore, and it seemed to everyone that the dampness was receding. The main thing was not to disperse the warmth with empty movements, not to break the fragile peace of the small fire. This is how respect for simple solutions that do not require loud words is born. Such hearths did not look heroic, but they kept people in line when it seemed that they could no longer stand upright. They taught patience and neatness, as well as the ability to share warmth equally. In essence, it was a small school of fortitude, where lessons were repeated every night. So they waited for the change until morning, and the morning wind found them gathered together. I am very interested to hear your point of view. How do you feel about the idea that something as small as a tin can keep up morale better than loud speeches? Write about it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There are many more unexpected stories of field life ahead. What if everything you've been taught about warmth at the front is outdated, and a modest candle was more important than a large bonfire? American and British troops often avoided open fires, which gave away their position and spread smoke across the entire slope. Instead, simple soldier kits with small candles were used, providing light and a tiny cone of warmth in the dugout. They were not displayed, but covered with a wet greatcoat or a wall made of tin cans to keep the heat inside. Such a candle did not make the night brighter, but it made it bearable, and that was enough. The soldiers got used to cherishing every stub as something they had paid for with fatigue. The short flame dried the map, warmed their breath, and helped maintain order when the hours seemed to stand still. People learned to sit closer to the wall so as not to cast unnecessary shadows, and held their palms higher where the air was already warm. A drop of wax on the board became a mark that no one crossed, so as not to disturb the fragile order. It was a simple agreement, understood without words or commands. In southern regions where the nights were long, such a candle was no less useful than a dry cloak. It was placed low, and this made the air in the dugout less biting and more tolerable. It was possible to write a few lines home, without trembling over every word, and to remember that a letter could also warm the heart. An empty can was always placed nearby. It served as a barrier for the light, so that no unwanted glances could find their way inside. And all this did not seem like a trick, but rather a habit of living carefully under scrutiny. The warmth from such a candle was modest, but it lasted longer than any burst of courage. It was not divided into equal parts, but simply allowed to be, without interference or haste. The soldier understood the value of a minute by the small fire and knew how to give it to his comrade who returned later. This was also heroism, only without drums and awards. Here's a question for you. What do you think provides stronger support in difficult times? A loud gesture or a quiet habit of order? In the next chapter, we will discuss another unexpectedly simple but remarkably effective way to keep warm, which was used on the eastern roads where wind and snow ruled. I will reveal the most closely guarded secret of a soldier's winter. Sometimes it is not metal that saves you, but simple earth. Soviet units and rear workshops used clay as a material that was readily available and easy to work with. They molded it into small stoves capable of retaining heat with a spoonful of oil and a handful of wood chips. Such a stove burned quietly, did not require much, and was able to give off an even heat that did not spill out into the night. There was something about this stubborn warmth that cannot be explained in words. A calm confidence that you would still see the morning. Oil was valued no less than bread in such places, and therefore it was treated with care, almost with respect. It was dripped on little by little, watching how the flame responded to each new drop. The clay held the heat as if it remembered the summer sun and shared it evenly. With such warmth, they did not boil life, but simply pushed back the cold, not letting it take over. It was an honest exchange. You save, and the stove pays with warmth. Clay stoves are easy to carry when the road calls you further and you can't linger. They were wrapped in a rag so they wouldn't crumble and placed in a corner where they wouldn't get in the way or catch the eye. The blizzard did not like silence, but this thing knew how to create it, like a skilled housewife in a small hut. It was important for the soldiers that the warmth did not scream about itself, but was simply there. Then even the snow fell more softly, and the nights did not seem endless. Such a stove reminded them of home, where the stove warms not only the walls but also the conversations. In the dugout, this feeling became a cure for anxiety that could not be treated with orders. A few minutes by the warm clay restored calm to the voice and precision to the hands. This was especially appreciated before the morning rush, when every little thing required attention. This fragile thing became part of the routine, like a shoelace tied correctly. If you are interested in this side of history, quiet, domestic, almost invisible, take a look at our other videos about everyday military life. There are also many things there that will not become museum exhibits, but without them, the picture of war would be incomplete. Want to know a secret that will change your perception of a small fire? The Allies often hid the flame, directing its heat to where it was most needed. A simple tin can was turned into a reflector that reflected the heat onto their hands and wet sleeves, saving every bit of warmth. The light remained behind the wall, and the heat returned to those sitting nearby, like a long echo in a hollow room. It was a way of saying to the night, "We are here, but we are not afraid of you." The reflector made the flame more modest but more useful, and that was what was most appreciated. It removed the excess brightness, leaving only the calm power of heat. Soldiers quickly understood the difference between a fire that is visible and a fire that helps. The latter was always in short supply in war, and any way to prolong it was precious. That's why the tin was cherished as part of the simple utensils, without which the evening would not be complete. There was another advantage. Such a shield discouraged people from reaching for the fire thoughtlessly. It was necessary to find the right place so that the heat would settle evenly and not disappear into the void. This taught patience, which is useful in any weather. Movements became more economical and conversations shorter and calmer. There was more strength in this restraint than in bright gestures, It is easy to overlook such things in memories, where people look for dramatic episodes and quick victories. But it is precisely these things that form the invisible foundation on which the ability to wait and work was based. No awards were given for this, and no one asked for any, because warmth is enough in itself. It does not require protocol and applause. It only needs an evening and a pair of caring hands. What do you think? Can a modest tin change the fate of a cold night? In the next chapter, you will learn how simple stones and bricks help to endure long stops, and why sometimes the most reliable heater is what has been lying at your feet for hundreds of years. A brick heated over a low fire retains heat longer than it appears. Soviet and American soldiers often use this old truth without giving it much thought. A stone heated in advance became a makeshift hot water bottle, which they placed close to their bodies and taught them to be patient and wait out the night. They wrapped it in a rag so as not to burn their hands and allowed the heat to dissipate slowly, like the noise after lights out. It was not magic, but a simple agreement with nature. Such a hot water bottle did not attract attention and did not require the use of rare items. It gave off a calm warmth where any movement was difficult. It was covered with a greatcoat and felt for in the dark, like a familiar book on a shelf. The warmth from the stone did not argue with anyone. It simply took its place when everything else had already been said. This made the night softer and shorter. In field camps, this solution caught on particularly quickly because it did not depend on supplies. All it took was a little time by a tiny fire and patience to wait for the right moment. Such small things revealed a common sense of proportion, which saves more often than loud courage. Thanks to this, the morning was less harsh and the road more manageable. People understood that warmth could be planned. Stones remember summer longer than paper remembers words, and they willingly share this store of memory. Such a store helps when you need to walk another kilometer or sit for another hour. It is not for show or for parade. It is so that your hands obey you again and your gaze does not blur. A brick warmer does not adorn frontline legends, but without it, there would be too much cold in those legends. Therefore, it was taken silently, without discussion or unnecessary questions. What I am about to show you is banned in 12 countries. So people sometimes joke, recalling how they made a small stove out of an empty box. American and British soldiers knew how to tame the cold air in an abandoned shed or in the corner of a barn. A small metal box, a secluded place without drafts, and neat hands made the space suitable for rest. The fire was hidden so that it was almost invisible from the outside, and the heat was collected inside, as if in the palms of the hands. It was not a celebration, but a quiet pause between tasks. Such a hearth always had its own geography. It stood where it could be heard and seen the least. Wet sleeves and gloves were placed nearby so that they would not crumble in the wind by morning. They did not sit for long, taking turns, not staying longer than necessary. Everyone understood the measure, because an extra minute of warmth sometimes costs too much. So day after day, a common caution developed. Caution also meant not getting too attached to a place. This thing lasted only as long as the stopover, and then disappeared along with the people. There was wisdom in this too. Leave no traces except a faint strip of warmth in your memory. Home is where your hands were warmed, even if only for a short time. And an hour later, the road welcomed them back without question. Inside such a shelter, they spoke briefly, saving their voices, just as they would save a dry shirt before a long journey. No big plans, just a simple order of actions that helped them hold on. The warmth worked without promises and simply did what it had to do. This made people calmer and more honest than they had been before. In this sense, the hearth was like a good friend who did not like loud words. Do you think there can be too much warmth in a place where it is most important to remain inconspicuous? And are you ready to learn in the next chapter how oil and light teach us not only to warm ourselves, but also to look into the darkness without fear? During the war, oil was not just a product, but a small currency of time and energy. Soviet units guarded it like a trusted word and spent it on light that also provided warmth. Such a fire was not bright, but it took the shivering from the fingers and allowed order to be restored to the bag and thoughts. It made possible work that does not like haste and shouting. The light from oil was quieter than a candle and more patient than the wind. This lamp helped to maintain rhythm when the night dragged on longer than usual. It was hidden from view, like letters are hidden and taken out when other methods had been exhausted. A mug and mittens that needed a little warmth always stood nearby. People learned to breathe more evenly so as not to disturb the fire, and this made them calmer. The world became more measured and understandable. Those who were responsible for maintaining order in places where it could easily collapse were particularly fond of the oil fire. They wanted the night not to take too much, and this fire willingly helped. It did not force people to talk, but it did not forbid it either, leaving the choice up to each individual. There was something truly homely about this respect for silence. A little warmth turned an empty corner into a place where people could gather. Such light reminded us that life is not reduced to loud episodes and reports. There are long moments when you just need to be yourself and not give in to anxiety. The oil measured out carefully taught this better than any instruction. There was just enough of it, as much as there was patience. And if patience did not fail, the morning came gently and on time. Sometimes it is not necessary to warm the room, but to restore warmth to the body that has been frightened by the wind. The Allied forces used glass jars, which retained heat longer than a mug. They were filled with hot water wherever possible, and this supply was shared like the last piece of bread. The jar was wrapped in a scarf so that the heat would escape more slowly and not burn. This allowed for a short but important pause in the middle of the road. Such a warmer did not require much preparation and left no traces. It taught them to quickly regain the ability to listen to commands and carry them out without unnecessary struggle against the cold. A few minutes were enough for the ligaments to stop aching and the fingers to recognize their gloves again. It was a simple thing, but at the right moment, it was decisive. Thus, a small thing became part of a big thing. This practice was especially useful where supplies were sporadic and stops were short. No one claimed a can for longer than necessary, just as no one kept a place by the fire longer than they should. Order was established by itself, and there were no reasons for arguments. The warmth was shared without words because otherwise it would simply disappear for nothing, and they tried not to waste anything there. A hot water bottle is also a sign of trust when it is passed from hand to hand. At such moments, people remembered that war is not only about distances and maps, it is also about simple gestures that keep a person where they can be useful. And if someone was a little luckier in the evening, they would definitely repay the debt in the morning. And that was also warmth, just of a different kind. The northern latitudes forced people to appreciate heat that does not shine. When the day is short and the night is longer than the road, any radiation becomes a sign, and a sign becomes a risk. Therefore, both Soviet and American soldiers looked for ways to keep warm without fire. They quickly realized that smoldering could work just as well as a flame if given the right place and allowed to breathe. A small can, sheltered from the wind, with a handful of coals or a soaked tampon, provided even unhurried heat. This was enough to revive gloves, dry sleeves, or warm a mug without giving away one's position. Such small details revealed discipline, not to make noise where light was dangerous and not to chase after effect if there was a result. The smoldering heat was unhurried, and that was its virtue. It did not take over immediately, but gradually. It was placed slightly to the side, not underfoot, but next to what needed to be brought back to a state of readiness. Mittens, boots, belts, straps. It was not touched every 5 minutes, tossed around, or fanned. It was a warmth that was trusted, and it responded in kind. People learned patience through such things. They understood that unnecessary fuss carried away the heat faster than the wind. Impatience cools not only iron, but also people. Therefore, the main rule of smoldering heat is not to interfere. It works better when left alone. Smoldering had its own pace, similar to the breathing of the camp. At first, it is barely noticeable, then it heats up, then it freezes in equilibrium. When a person adjusted to this rhythm, he himself became calmer. From the heat that does not rush, they learned regularity. Even a brief rest turned into a short lesson in attentiveness. Place the can on a slope, cover the gap from the wind, turn the objects so that they heat evenly. Everything is simple, everything is logical. But it was precisely in this simplicity that the confidence was born that the morning would come without haste. There is another advantage. Smoldering does not attract attention. It does not compete with the darkness, does not cast reflections on the snow, does not give off a smell far away. It just works. It does its job where a fire would be too noticeable, too noisy, too greedy. For scouts, sentries, signalmen, and night guards, it was the ideal companion. It allowed them to warm their hands without giving away their position, and at the same time did not turn into a hassle. This kind of warmth did not require an audience, and perhaps that is why it was treated with special respect. Its modesty was its safety. War teaches not only how to destroy, but also how to economize. Where every spark could cost a signal, the ability to retain heat without light became a real craft. Experienced soldiers shared their methods. Some put coals in an empty tin can and covered them with a layer of sand. Others used a metal box with holes in the sides, turning it into a miniature stove. The Americans made hand warmers, pocket warmers with special charcoal inserts that smoldered for hours. Soviet soldiers used homemade cans with cotton wool and alcohol, which gave off a soft, even heat. All of this had one thing in common: moderation. No more than necessary and no faster than necessary. Such warmth went well with discipline. It did not require shouting, did not create a reason for conversation. It was simply put in place, checked every few hours and forgotten. It worked on its own, like a sentry on duty. And while it lasted, the night became shorter. The entire order of the camp was built around this quiet work. Where to dry clothes, where to sleep, where to stand guard. People understood that warmth was not just physics. It was part of the overall way of life, part of managing attention. Such solutions are born not out of luxury, but out of a precise understanding of what is important. People accustomed to cold winds and long routes did not argue with circumstances. They knew that it was not worth wasting energy on the impossible. They collected small, practical methods, put them into a system, and this system allowed them to live another day. No one awarded medals for this, but everyone knew the value of such simplicity. If there is such a thing as true luxury in war, it is not rare food or rest by the fire. True luxury is the ability to warm your gloves without unnecessary words, without glamour, without noise. To restore softness to the body, feeling to the hands, dryness to clothing. It is a small return to normality that makes a person fit for duty again. And all this comes from a small can, hidden from the wind, where something smolders that requires no attention. The smoldering heat does not light the way, but it helps you get there. And perhaps it is this that best describes Northern training. Do not rush, do not waste, do not show off. Do exactly as much as you need to and preserve the most important thing, the ability to continue. Guess what happened next when winter hit harder than usual? German units were also looking for ways to keep warm where every little thing mattered. Ceramic tiles that retained heat from a short fire for a long time and simple canvas screens that blocked drafts were in demand. It didn't look impressive, but it gave them a few extra hours of sleep without shivering. And sometimes that extra bit of warmth is what makes the day bearable. Ceramics loved predictability and did not tolerate fuss, so they were handled with care. They were placed closer to the floor, where the cold was particularly stubborn and allowed to speak their slow language. Where space was tight, screens helped to gather the heat in one corner. People quickly saw the difference and treated such things with respect. No miracles, just honest work. German soldiers, like everyone else, understood that warmth loves order. They carried this knowledge from one camp to another without changing their tone. Simple techniques stuck in their memory, like a knot on a belt after rain. And there was nothing unique about this. It was common human logic for survival. The enemy is recognized on the battlefield, and warmth is recognized at rest. Sometimes additional layers of fabric were used at the entrance to the shelter to keep the night from taking away too much. This did not require instructions, only attentiveness and patience. And even here there was room for careful generosity when an extra piece of cloth was given to neighbors. This is how a small map of care was formed, on which there are no empty spaces. It is not drawn with a pencil, it is remembered with the hands. These examples are rarely mentioned because they are too mundane for sensational stories. But it is precisely these examples that remind us that war is not sustained by legends, but by stubborn, daily work. Warmth is one of its lines, and it runs through all armies without exception. 7 simple heaters made of tin cans, candles, jars, clay, and oil. 7 ways to stay true to yourself where it is most difficult. And there are no national differences in this, only a common human need for warmth. We walked along quiet paths, warming our hands by a small fire and learning to cherish every bit of warmth. These 7 homemade heaters are not about showiness, but about quiet dignity. They were invented by the British, the Soviets, and the Americans, and were found among the Germans because the cold does not ask for a passport. What do you think of this topic of frontline warmth? Which of these methods seem the most humane and necessary to you? Subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments what you want to hear about in future episodes. We will definitely return to the everyday side of big history.